Aileen Wournos had a childhood that was quickly discarded. At 6 months old, her mother rejected her and then departed. Left with a father that was prone to physical abuses, he accepted no explanations or viable excuses. Beaten and yelled at and given no affection, she learned to do anything to avoid his rejection. It was a behavior she applied to nearly everyone she met, in a desperate search for love that she could never get. And soon she came to believe that this world will just use you, that it will take all you have and then just abuse you. Her brother had sex with her when she was just 8 years old. Then he passed her around to his friends, and ain't that just cold? At 13 she gave birth to a pedophile's child. The baby was taken away and the truth was then filed. Her father was so cold he kicked her out in the middle of winter. He was angered by her pregnancy, and so his kindness, it didn't win her. She spent 2 years in the forest trying to survive in the cold. In order to get a shower at a hotel, she was bought and sold. She headed to Florida to find a place that was warmer. She was running from the past and all that was former. She learned to make a living in the only way she knew. She sold herself for sex and hoped for affection too. But a prostitute's life is a dangerous game. You can never be sure if the John will treat you the same. So Aileen got a gun just to protect her life. She was tired of sex at the end of a knife. But nothing could have prepared her for that violent day, when the man she picked up said she was going to pay. He beat her and squirted rubbing alcohol into her anus and vagina. He yelled he could kill her as he stood there behind her. It was by chance that she was able to reach for her gun, because there was no chance that she was able to escape or to run. Bang bang went the gun as she pulled the trigger. It was a reaction that her assailant couldn't figure. Almost in slow motion she watched him fall to the ground, as her nerves were shaken by the strength that she'd found. And from that moment on she knew they would never get away. If they tried to hurt her, she was going to make them pay. It was then she moved from victim to perpetrator. She would no longer be the object of a woman hater. She found a young woman who she thought finally loved her, but this woman wanted more and she constantly shoved her. Aileen just wanted a chance at a normal life. She dreamed of the chance to be somebody's wife. She tried to find a regular job to get out of prostitution, but her girlfriend spent all the money, leaving them in destitution. And besides, no one would hire her. She had no education. It didn't matter that she had the heart or the dedication. So back to the street she went to put money on the table. She was dreaming of a better life, but it turned out to be a fable. But the last attack had left her terrified with fear. She had a hard time with the idea of letting any men get near. And all the years of abuse had begun to take its toll. It had begun to destroy her mind and denigrate her soul. She slipped farther and farther into a psychotic break. Her life had hurt her much more than anyone can take. So with every man who picked her up, she had the same reaction. The fear she felt inside would drive her to distraction, until once again she reenacted her trauma's final scene. She pulled the gun and fired before he started to be mean. One by one the deaths accumulated, pointing to a serial killer, while Aileen's girlfriend was never satisfied and needed more to fill her. But soon the police had figured out that the killer was a female, and Aileen's girlfriend realized that she knew some of the detail. And so she made a deal to save herself and sold out her female lover. She made it very clear she was not Aileen and was somehow quite above her. Aileen gave up and confessed to save her girlfriend any trouble. I didn't realize until later her betrayal burst the bubble. Her mind slipped farther and farther across the edge of no return. She would not try to save herself from the pain she would relearn. Her lawyer would smoke pot on the way to state her case. He didn't seem to care about the verdict she would face. The U.S. passed a law in order to put the mentally ill to death. It was the only way to kill Aileen and take away her breath. And even though she testified in court about her rape, there was no one there to help her cut through the legal tape. The emotion in her testimony made it clear she spoke the truth, but she may as well have been talking about a broken tooth. And in the end she gave up and refused to save her life. She'd lost the love she wanted and a chance to be a wife. Her paranoia took over as she talked of plans and schemes, and certainly the actions of some people were other than it seems. People smelled a good story and a chance to make a buck. They weren't above taking advantage of Eileen's sorry luck. And certainly the movie brought in a pretty dollar, but it didn't do anything to dispel what they had called her. So on a quiet, lonely day, and as the rain came down, she received a lethal injection, her ashes sprinkled on the ground. Her claim to fame as a serial killer would go down in history, but for those who knew her story, there would be no mystery. Aileen Wournos was the product of a world that was unkind. First it broke her body, and then it broke her mind. And when it finally took all that it could take, it was made into a movie for the money it could make. And in her final moment she faced death all alone. Her ashes sprinkled on the ground, she never got a stone. I speak for Aileen Wournos because she never had a voice. She should never have been killed because she never had a choice.